The Art of the Unanswered Question. Introduction. We have all found ourselves in that familiar crucible. The query hangs in the air, crystalline and sharp, and a predictable pressure begins to constrict within. It might be the crucible of a job interview, where your professional destiny teeters on the precipice of your reply. Or perhaps it is a convivial exchange that, with an unnerving swiftness, morphs into an inquisition. Even in the public forum of a discourse, the moment the floor is seated for questions can feel akin to stepping into a searing spotlight, a relentless clock ticking down the precious seconds allotted for your response. Society, in its well-intentioned wisdom, inculcates in us the notion that to answer is the province of the astute, the forthright, the engaged. We are schooled in the virtues of alacrity, of thoroughness, of delivering precisely the information solicited. But what if this ingrained instinct, this automatic impulse to respond, is, in fact, a subtle snare? What if the true mastery of communication lies not in the exhaustive answering of every query, but in the discerning selection of which questions to address and with what measured approach? The conventional modus operandi for confronting questions is to plunge headlong into the fray, to offer the most immediate and direct answer that surfaces. This may feel like an embodiment of candor, yet it frequently signifies a capitulation of control. When you respond without pause, the interrogator assumes dominion over the tempo and trajectory of the dialogue. Their agenda becomes indelibly entwined with yours. It is akin to being caught in an inexorable current, suddenly finding yourself propelled in a direction of their choosing, rather than the one you had charted. This perpetual state of reaction can prove a profound drain on your reserves, leaving you feeling disoriented and diminished, a stranger to your own authentic self. You may find yourself ensnared in the labyrinth of overthinking, desperately seeking the perfect articulation, and thereby forfeiting the organic fluidity of the exchange. More critically, by offering a swift, unvarnished reply, you may inadvertently forfeit an opportunity to convey something of greater import, something that could truly illuminate your essence or showcase your capabilities. Consider, for a moment, individuals who occupy prominent public spaces, perhaps actors or musicians navigating the currents of an interview. Observe how they do not always furnish the immediate, predictable response. They pause, they deliberate, and in so doing, they frequently pivot the conversation toward subjects that resonate more profoundly with their own interests and convictions. This is not an exercise in evasion, it is an assertion of their intrinsic rhythm. This, then, is the very heart of what we shall endeavor to explore, the concept of strategic answering. It is the deliberate cultivation of influence over the unfolding of conversations and interviews. Rather than feeling compelled to address every question that arises, you will learn to identify and prioritize those inquiries that serve as conduits for sharing your narrative or advancing your objectives. It is about comprehending the subtle interplay of energies between individuals and ensuring that you are not depleted by external pressures. Strategic answering empowers you to dictate your own pace and focus. It liberates you from the tyranny of feeling overwhelmed, enables you to skillfully guide the discourse, and allows you to present yourself with a considered and assured demeanor. Instead of merely reacting to the promptings of another, you can transmute their questions into opportunities to expound upon that which you wish to convey, or to address the very questions you secretly hoped they would pose. This strategic paradigm extends far beyond the confines of formal interrogations. It is a cultivated skill capable of transforming a myriad of interactions. Envision navigating the complexities of a social gathering, forging more robust interpersonal connections, or even confronting a challenging dialogue with an enhanced sense of self-possession. Strategic answering furnishes you with a robust framework for achieving these ends. You will acquire the discernment to recognize when a question presents a valuable opening and when it might be more judicious to artfully redirect the conversational current. We shall delve into the methods for preserving your own vital energy, thereby enabling you to remain present and authentic, rather than perpetually ensconced in a defensive posture. The ultimate aspiration is to transcend the role of a reactive respondent and emerge as a confident communicator, one who possesses the agency to shape the very narrative. The art of communication is a tapestry far richer than the mere provision of answers. It is an intricate dance of understanding unspoken dynamics, of sensing the ebb and flow of energy, and of harnessing the profound power of intentionality. This book stands as your compass, guiding you toward the mastery of this sophisticated art. It is about uncovering the profound truth that, at times, the most potent communication emanates not from the answer you deliver, but from the deliberate, considered choice of what you elect to answer. Are you prepared to embark upon an exploration of the compelling power of the unanswered question? Chapter 1. Mastering the Interview. 1. Understanding Interview Basics. The interview. For many, the word itself conjures images of stark illumination, impassive visages, and an unyielding barrage of inquiries. It feels akin to an examination, a trial by fire where every utterance is dissected, and a solitary misstep can unravel the entire endeavor. We frequently enter these arenas with a visceral clench of apprehension, convinced that our sole purpose is to be a quiescent vessel to disgorge our thoughts and experiences upon demand. But what if this prevalent perception is precisely the impediment? What if the interview is not an interrogation at all, but a meticulously orchestrated performance, a choreographed exchange wherein we wield more agency than we apprehend? This is the genesis of comprehending the fundamental paradigm shift that strategic answering propounds. It commences with the recognition that an interview transcends mere response. It is the stewardship of a fluid interaction. Contemplate it thus. When you observe your favored thespian on screen, they are not simply reciting dialogue. They are embodying a persona, commanding their presence, and subtly orchestrating the audience's emotional arc. Analogously, within an interview, you are presenting yourself. The interrogator, too, is performing, endeavoring to elicit a particular narrative or impression. This shared crucible, this mutual performance, is the locus of your influence. It is not a matter of dissimulation, but of intentionality. It is the acknowledgement that you possess a role to fulfill, and the prerogative to define its execution. This leads us to a verity of paramount, yet often disregarded, significance. You are not obligated to answer that question, at least not in the manner you might instinctively assume. We have all been conditioned to believe that a posed question necessitates a direct, immediate rejoinder. Yet, this can prove a subtle snare. At times, the interviewer's query serves as a nascent point of departure, an attempt to explore particular terrain, but not necessarily the most efficacious route to understanding your essence. The core tenet of strategic answering lies in the practice of governing conversational and interview dynamics by electing to address inquiries that fortify your narrative or objectives, rather than feeling compelled to provide a literal response to every question posed. It necessitates the discernment of social cues, the comprehension of energetic exchanges, and the deliberate establishment of your own tempo and focal point. This methodology empowers individuals to circumvent discomposure, to steer the discourse, and to project themselves with greater deliberation and command. Consider the nuanced art of answering the questions they wished they had asked. This is not an exercise in evasion or the sidestepping of challenging subjects. Rather, it is the recognition that a broad or even slightly misaligned query can function as an invitation. It presents an opportune moment to pivot, to gently guide the conversation toward those facets of your history or experience that you wish to illuminate, those that truly showcase your strengths and intentions. For instance, if confronted with a question regarding a past obstacle that you feel does not adequately encapsulate your evolution, rather than becoming ensnared in the minutiae of that specific event, you might articulate, that situation was undeniably a formative experience, and it imparted invaluable lessons regarding articulate a broader skill or learned principle. In fact, it catalyzed my resolve to cultivate my proficiency in designate a relevant strength or area of expertise, a pursuit that has yielded profound rewards. You have acknowledged the inquiry, yet you have transmuted it into a springboard for discussing something more germane and empowering. You are responding to the essence of their curiosity, but through the prism of your chosen narrative. This brings us to the delicate choreography of energy. Interviewers, particularly those adept in their craft, often project a distinct energetic field. They might exhibit a rapid cadence, an intense focus, or an effervescent enthusiasm. It is a natural inclination to mirror this energy, to accelerate one's own responses, to be unsettled by their intensity. However, it is precisely here that strategic answering urges you to maintain your own rhythm. Conceive of it as a partnership in dance. If one participant executes a frenetic jig and the other attempts to replicate that exact frantic pace, both are likely to falter. Inversely, if one individual sustains a steady, assured tempo, they can gracefully navigate the other's movements, even subtly guiding them. In an interview, matching an interviewer's heightened energy can lead to rushed thoughts, a sense of overwhelm, and a loss of composure. Instead, by consciously preserving your own calm, deliberate pace, you signal confidence and control. This is not about sluggishness or disengagement. It is about thoughtful deliberation. It is about seizing the moment required to formulate a coherent, impactful response, rather than being swept away by external momentum. This measured pace allows for processing, for the judicious selection of words, and for the presentation of oneself as an individual in command of their thoughts, not dictated by the interviewers. The nascent moments of any interview possess an extraordinary potency. They establish the tenor for all that is to follow. Many individuals experience an immediate compulsion to fill any silence, to interject and answer the instant a question is posed. But what if that silence is not an adversary? What if a brief interlude, a moment to gather one's thoughts, can actually serve as a potent instrument? This pause can be interpreted not as hesitation or a deficit of knowledge, but as contemplative consideration. It signifies that you are not merely reacting, but reflecting. This represents a prime opportunity to commence the construction of your narrative. Even prior to a specific question being posed, or in response to a general opening, you can employ your voice to set the stage. For instance, in a professional interview, rather than awaiting the interviewer to inquire about your background, you might initiate with a declaration such as, "I am genuinely enthusiastic to be present today. I have been observing company name S contributions in specific domain for some time, and I am particularly struck by mention a specific project or value. My own professional trajectory has been dedicated to cultivating expertise in articulate your key skills, and I perceive a profound resonance with the innovative spirit I have observed here." You have utilized the initial moments not to answer a question, but to launch into a preconceived narrative that aligns with your aspirations. You have begun to steer the discourse, demonstrating your enthusiasm and highlighting your relevant strengths before the interviewer has even had an opportunity to direct you elsewhere. This is not about a lack of preparation. It is about being strategically prepared to introduce the narrative you intend to convey. So, how does one actively reframe their internal discourse concerning interviews, transitioning from a mindset of being scrutinized to one of strategic engagement? It commences with a deliberate endeavor to challenge ingrained assumptions. When you experience that familiar tremor of anxiety, pause and interrogate yourself, am I here to be judged, or am I here to articulate my capabilities and explore a mutual congruence? Remind yourself that the interviewer is also seeking something. They are in pursuit of information, a connection, a resolution. They are not an omniscient arbiter, but a participant in a dialogue. Envision the interview not as an interrogation chamber, but as a platform. You have a role, and you possess the agency to determine its delivery. This psychological recalibration is the bedrock of strategic answering. It is the acknowledgement that your presence, your considered responses, and your controlled energy are as integral to the interview as the questions themselves. What are the subtle indicators within an interviewer's questioning style that might signal an opportune moment to subtly redirect that conversation, and how can these be identified without appearing evasive? Seek out questions that are exceptionally broad, open-ended, or perhaps slightly peripheral to your core competencies. For example, if an interviewer poses, "Tell me about yourself," this presents a golden opportunity. Rather than a chronological recitation of your curriculum vitae, you can leverage this as a chance to introduce your central narrative. You might state, "Well, I perceive myself as an individual deeply passionate about your field and driven by the imperative, be your motivation. My career has been a journey of briefly delineate your overarching path, consistently focused on key skill or value. Most recently, I have found particular exhilaration in my work on mention a relevant project or achievement where I was able to quantifiable outcome or impact." You have taken a generalized query and employed it to accentuate specific, pertinent areas. Another indicator might be a question that appears to stem from a superficial comprehension of your background. If they inquire about a minor detail on your resume that does not truly reflect your expertise, you can acknowledge it briefly and then pivot. "Indeed, that was a particular project where I gained some initial exposure to skill. However, my more profound focus and passion have truly resided in related, more significant skill or domain, where I have had the privilege to describe a more impactful experience." The crux lies in acknowledging the interviewer's prompt without becoming ensnared therein. It is about a gentle redirection, a subtle shift in emphasis that guides the conversation back to the narrative you aspire to present. It is about listening not merely to the words, but to the underlying intent, and subsequently responding in a manner that serves your overarching objective. By understanding that the interview is a dynamic interplay of performance and strategy, rather than a rigid interrogation, we can begin to dismantle the pressure to simply react. The true artistry resides not in the flawless answer, but in the deliberate choice of which narrative to inhabit. This foundational shift in perspective prepares us to explore the specific techniques for governing that narrative, commencing with how we manage our own presence and energy in the face of external pressures. This marks the inception of mastering the interview, not by assuming the role of a passive subject, but by evolving into an active, strategic participant. 2. Crafting the perfect question. The interview, often perceived as a gladiatorial arena of query and reply, is in truth a stage. And upon this platform, the most captivating performers do not merely excel at retort, they are virtuosos at sculpting that very script. We habitually conceive of interviews as a unilateral imposition, the interrogator wielding absolute authority armed with their preordained list of inquiries. But what if we possessed the subtle art of influencing the questions themselves? What if, rather than passively responding, we could proactively shape the discourse? This is the very essence of what we term strategic answering, and its genesis predates our first utterance. It commences with the profound realization that the ideal question is frequently in illusion, and that we, the interviewed, command a surprising latitude to guide the interrogator toward those inquiries that most advantageously illuminate our narrative. Frequently, interviewers, even those of considerable experience, proffer questions that are either excessively broad, predictably pedestrian, or simply lack incisive depth. They may be constrained by temporal limitations, operating from a generalized brief, or seeking facile, soundbite ready pronouncements. Consider this. How often have we encountered a politician queried, "What is your economic strategy?" or a celebrity asked, "How do you perceive fame?" These are mere starting points, not definitive conclusions. They are invitations to discourse, not instruments of interrogation. To recognize this is the inaugural step. When a question feels too general, too amorphous, or solicits a superficial response, it is not a trap, it is an opening. It signals the interviewer's receptiveness to direction, a direction we are empowered to provide. Instead of feeling compelled to offer a generic reply, we can leverage that very broadness as a launchpad. Herein lies the brilliance of strategic answering. It is not about evading challenging subjects, but about dictating the terms of their exploration, ensuring the conversation gravitates toward those domains where our strengths, insights, and unique narrative can truly resonate. One of the most potent methodologies for achieving this is what I term narrative seeding. This is akin to planting seeds of thought within the interviewer's mind, which then organically blossom into the very questions we aspire to address. How do we accomplish this? It begins with our initial responses, our comportment, and even the themes we elect to accentuate when granted an opening. For instance, if you are being interviewed regarding a nascent project, and the interviewer poses a general query such as, "Elaborate on this project," you transcend a mere enumeration of features. You might commence by spotlighting a singular, groundbreaking facet that evokes particular pride, or a formidable obstacle surmounted that exemplifies your resilience. You could articulate, "This project is exceptionally exhilarating because it confronts an issue that has long been overlooked. Our focus was on specific innovative solution, a development with the potential to fundamentally alter how individuals perform a certain action." By emphasizing that precise innovation and its potential ramifications, you subtly steer the interviewer. They are likely to follow with inquiries concerning that innovation, its genesis, or its impact, rather than adhering to a more generalized overview. You have, in essence, sown the seed for a more granular and more advantageous line of questioning. This technique is not an exercise in subterfuge, it is an embodiment of considered communication. It stems from the understanding that interviews are a collaborative endeavor, even if the dynamic does not always overtly suggest it. The interviewer seeks a compelling narrative, and we can facilitate its discovery by providing judicious guidance. Envision a seminal interview with a distinguished scientist expounding upon a complex discovery. Rather than awaiting the interviewer's descent into technical minutiae, the scientist might begin by articulating the profound implications of their research, how it could reshape our cosmic comprehension or elevate human well-being. This immediately shifts the discourse from the how to the why and the what if, laying the groundwork for more profound, resonant questions regarding the discovery's potential and its broader significance. The interviewer, sensing the palpable passion and the inherent importance, will naturally delve deeper into these very areas. Another remarkably effective instrument within the strategic answering repertoire is the power of the what if and hypothetical inquiries. These are not mere flights of fancy, they are strategic stratagems. When an interviewer poses a direct, potentially contentious question, particularly one addressing a sensitive or intricate matter, introducing a hypothetical scenario can prove transformative. For example, if confronted with a question about a past misstep or a controversial decision, rather than offering a direct defense or explanation that might betray defensiveness, you can pivot. You might state, "That is a pertinent observation and it brings to light a critical dimension." Were we to confront a comparable situation today armed with our current knowledge, the approach would undoubtedly differ. We would prioritize articulate a positive action or learned lesson. This permits you to address the underlying concern without becoming ensnared in a potentially detrimental defense. You demonstrate prescience, an aptitude for learning, and a proactive problem-solving orientation, all on your own terms. This technique also affords you the opportunity to showcase your analytical acumen and your visionary perspective. Imagine a business leader being interviewed about market challenges. Instead of merely cataloging these obstacles, they might remark, "The market is indeed encountering headwinds. But what if we perceive this not as a challenge, but as an impetus for innovation? What if we were to invest substantially in emerging technology or explore new market segment? That, I believe, is where genuine growth resides." This transmutes the conversation from a reactive discourse on predicaments to a proactive exploration of resolutions and future potentialities. It enables the interviewee to project leadership, strategic foresight, and a forward-looking outlook, all by subtly coaxing the interviewer to inquire about the future rather than dwelling on present difficulties. The art of reframing and redirection is a subtle yet indispensable skill. It involves acknowledging the interviewer's question while gently guiding the conversation toward your prepared narrative or a more advantageous subject. This is not an act of evasion. It is about answering the spirit of the question or the question you wish had been posed. Phrases such as, "That's an intriguing question, and it touches upon a broader theme I've been eager to address," or, "I appreciate your inquiry regarding X, as it allows me to expound upon Y," which is truly the crux of our endeavor, are invaluable. The key lies in effecting a seamless and logical transition so that it appears as a natural extension of the interviewer's line of questioning rather than an abrupt divergence. Consider a scenario where an interviewer poses a question that is factually erroneous or predicated upon a misunderstanding. Rather than directly correcting them, which can occasionally sound adversarial, you can employ reframing. You might respond, "I comprehend your perspective given common misconception. However, the reality on the ground is that we have actually observed provide accurate information or a more nuanced viewpoint. This has enabled us to achieve positive outcome." You acknowledge their premise, gently rectify it with factual data, and then pivot to a favorable consequence. This demonstrates poise under pressure, a mastery of the facts, and the capacity to transform a potentially negative situation into a positive one. Perhaps the most profound facet of strategic answering is the capacity to anticipate the unasked question. This entails discerning the underlying concerns, curiosities, or even anxieties that the interviewer, and by extension their audience, might harbor, even if they have not articulated them explicitly. It demands empathy and a profound grasp of the context. If you are being interviewed about a sensitive corporate policy, for instance, the interviewer might not directly inquire, "Are you concerned about employee morale?" Yet, they might pose broader questions regarding the policy's implementation. By proactively addressing the potential impact on morale within your response, you exhibit foresight and genuine consideration for the individuals involved. You might state, "As we institute this new policy, our paramount concern is ensuring our team feels supported and comprehends the rationale. We have instituted specific measures to support employees because we believe their well-being is integral to our success." You have, in essence, answered the unasked question concerning employee welfare, often preempting a more direct and potentially more challenging inquiry. This anticipatory approach is not solely about circumventing arduous questions. It is about demonstrating a comprehensive understanding of the situation. It conveys that you have meticulously considered all facets, including those that may not be immediately apparent. When a political candidate is interviewed about a new initiative, they may be questioned about its cost. However, the unasked question might be, "Will this genuinely be effective?" By proactively delineating pilot programs, the data substantiating its efficacy, and the contingency plans in place, the candidate addresses the underlying doubt and projects confidence in their proposal. They are not merely responding to the question of cost. They are constructing a case for the initiative's success. The ethical implications of actively shaping interview questions warrant careful consideration. The objective is not to deceive, mislead, or manipulate. It is to present oneself and one's message in the most effective and authentic manner possible. Strategic answering is about controlling the narrative trajectory by electing to address questions that align with your purpose, rather than feeling obligated to directly confront every query posed. It involves observing social cues, comprehending energy dynamics, and deliberately dictating one's own pace and focus. It empowers individuals to avoid discomposure, to guide the conversation, and to present themselves with greater thoughtfulness and control. This methodology stands in stark contrast to reactive answering, where one is solely governed by the interviewer's prompts. Authenticity is preserved by ensuring that the narratives you choose to emphasize are truthful and representative of your core values and experiences. It is about selecting which truths to highlight and how to frame them, not about fabricating them. Ultimately, the ideal question is frequently the one that empowers you to recount your most compelling story. By mastering the art of seating, framing, and anticipating questions, you transform the interview from an examination into a performance. You become the conductor, not merely an instrument. You ensure the conversation flows in a direction that accentuates your strengths, clarifies your intentions, and leaves an enduring, positive impression. This proactive stance is not about evading scrutiny. It is about inviting the appropriate kind of scrutiny, the kind that fosters understanding and appreciation. Having grasped the means by which to influence the questions themselves, the subsequent crucial step is to master the delivery of responses that not only address the intended question, but also reinforce the interviewee's core message and inherent energy. This leads us to the vital practice of controlling our own cadence and presence, ensuring we are the orchestrators of the conversation, not merely its passive participants. 3. Techniques for effective listening. In the intricate dance of an interview, the spotlight often shines on the answers given. We are trained to believe that the mark of a good interviewee is a swift, confident, and comprehensive response to every query. Yet, beneath this surface expectation lies a deeper truth, a more potent strategy. The real power, the true art, often begins not with speaking, but with listening. This isn't the passive act of merely hearing words, it's an active, engaged, and profoundly strategic immersion in what is being communicated. Mastering this art of listening is the bedrock upon which the practice of strategic answering is built. It's about understanding that every question is a piece of information, a signal, and that how we receive and process that signal dictates our ability to orchestrate the conversation's flow and sculpt our own narrative. Techniques for effective listening. Consider an interview not as a tribunal where you are the accused, but as a dialogue where you are a skilled participant. Your objective isn't merely to endure the barrage of questions, but to guide the direction, to illuminate what matters most to you. This begins with listening, but not solely with your ears. It demands your undivided attention, your intellect, and your intuition. Listening beyond the words. Decoding intent. The first, and perhaps most critical, step in effective listening is to look beyond the simple words a question employs. Every question is a window into the interviewer's mind, their agenda, their biases, and their underlying assumptions. They are rarely asking purely for information. They are often striving to achieve something. Are they attempting to unearth a vulnerability? Are they testing your command of a specific subject? Are they seeking a soundbite that aligns with a particular narrative they wish to construct? Imagine a scenario where a journalist poses to a politician, "Are you responsible for the rise in unemployment in your district?" The literal question concerns responsibility and unemployment, but the intent behind it is likely far broader. The interviewer might be attempting to assign blame. They may already believe the politician is culpable and are seeking validation. Elicit an emotional reaction. They might wish to observe if the politician becomes defensive or flustered. Enforce a specific narrative. They could be pushing a story that the politician's policies are faltering. If you apprehend only the words, you might feel compelled to launch into an exhaustive defense of your policies, or, worse, become ensnared in a binary yes or no predicament. But if you listen for the intent, you can commence strategizing. You recognize that the interviewer is pursuing a narrative of failure. Your listening enables you to grasp this, and then, through strategic answering, you can elect to pivot. Instead of directly responding to a question that frames you unfavorably, you might articulate, "That is a profoundly serious concern, and it is something I am deeply focused on. What I have been diligently working on, and what I believe is the true story here, is how we are generating new employment opportunities through initiatives X and Y." You have acknowledged the subject matter, but have steered it toward your chosen narrative, demonstrating that you have heard that underlying concern but are choosing to address it from a position of strength and control. This is the essence of strategic answering, leveraging your listening acumen to discern the external pressure and then choosing to respond in a manner that serves your internal narrative. This deep listening encompasses observing the interviewer's vocal cadence. Is it sharp and accusatory, or curious and receptive? Their nonverbal cues are also a crucial indicator. Are they leaning forward, maintaining eye contact, suggesting engagement? Or are they averting their gaze, fidgeting, perhaps signaling a lack of conviction or a predetermined conclusion? Attending to these subtle signals allows you to gauge the interviewer's energy and their true objective, furnishing you with invaluable intelligence for deciding your subsequent move. The power of the pause, strategic silence as a listening tool. We are frequently instructed that silence in discourse is awkward. In interviews, it can feel like a void, a moment where you are expected to fill the space with pronouncements. But this is a misconception. A deliberate, considered pause is not an emblem of weakness or confusion. It is a potent instrument for active listening and strategic formulation. It is a moment where you are not merely awaiting your turn to speak, but actively processing what has just been articulated. When an interviewer poses a question, resist the immediate impulse to respond. Take a breath. Allow the question to settle. This brief interval of silence serves several critical functions. Firstly, it grants your cognitive faculties the precious seconds they require to truly absorb the question, not merely its superficial meaning, but its subtleties, its potential pitfalls, and its underlying intent. This processing time is indispensable for averting a reactive, impulsive answer that you might subsequently regret. Secondly, this pause can subtly recalibrate the interview's dynamic. It can prompt the interviewer to pause as well, perhaps to reconsider their own question or to become more cognizant of the pressure they are exerting. For the interviewee, this pause represents an active listening phase. It is akin to a conductor pausing to absorb the orchestra's resonance before raising their baton. It allows you to access pertinent information, to connect the question to your overarching narrative, and to select the most efficacious method of response, or indeed, whether to respond directly at all. Envision being confronted with a complex question about a past undertaking that did not unfold flawlessly. Your immediate inclination might be to hasten into an explanation, endeavoring to cover all bases and mitigate any perceived damage. But by pausing, you afford yourself the latitude to contemplate. What is the interviewer truly endeavoring to ascertain here? Are they seeking an admission of failure, or are they interested in my crude wisdom? What is the most advantageous and truthful manner to contextualize this experience? This pause enables you to transition from a defensive posture to a more proactive one. You can then opt to address the question by emphasizing the lessons learned, the resilience demonstrated, or the unforeseen positive outcomes that emerged from the challenge. The silence itself becomes a signal of your command and thoughtfulness rather than an indication of being overwhelmed. It is an active listening technique that cultivates the space for strategic answering, identifying the real question, unpacking nuance and assumptions. Many questions, particularly in interviews, are not straightforward requests for factual data. They are frequently framed in a manner that contains embedded assumptions, biases, or a particular perspective. An interviewer might inquire, why do you believe your company has faltered in its innovation over the past 5 years? This question presumes that the company has indeed failed to innovate. If you accept this premise and commence explaining your rationale, you have already conceded ground. You have validated the interviewer's potentially erroneous assumption. Effective listening necessitates the capacity to dissect the question, to identify these embedded assumptions, and to comprehend the narrative that interviewer seeks to construct. This demands a discerning ear, a readiness to question the premise, and the confidence to reframe the situation. Instead of directly answering the question as posed, you can employ your listening skills to identify the assumption and then choose to challenge or redirect it. For instance, upon hearing, why do you believe your company has faltered in its innovation over the past 5 years? A strategically answering interviewee might reply, that is an intriguing perspective. While some may perceive a lull in certain domains, what we have actually been undertaking is the meticulous preparation for a significant advancement. Our investment in research and development over the last 3 years, for example, is unprecedented, and we are poised to announce a breakthrough in X that will redefine the market. Here, you have not disregarded the subject of innovation, but you have refused to acquiesce to the interviewer's framing of failure. You have listened to the underlying concern regarding innovation, but you have utilized your listening to pinpoint the assumption of failure and then strategically transitioned to a narrative of preparation and impending success. This requires meticulous listening not merely to the words, but to the spirit of the question and the interviewer's underlying expectations. It is about recognizing that the interviewer's question is often a starting point, not a terminus, and your listening permits you to determine where that journey ultimately leads. This process of unpacking nuance also extends to loaded terminology or generalizations. If an interviewer employs a term that feels overly simplistic or judgmental, your listening should flag it. You can then choose to clarify, reframe, or offer a more nuanced perspective. This demonstrates that you are not merely a passive recipient of information, but an active participant who comprehends the complexities of the subject matter and is capable of providing a more comprehensive portrayal. Active confirmation and clarification, ensuring understanding and control. At times, the most efficacious method of listening is to actively engage with the interviewer's question in a manner that confirms your comprehension while simultaneously subtly asserting command. This does not entail requesting perpetual repetition, but rather employing brief, strategic interjections to ensure you are mutually aligned and to guide the conversation's trajectory. This is where listening transmutes into an active, gentle redirection and narrative sculpting. Phrases such as, "So, if I comprehend correctly, you are inquiring about the ramifications of our new policy on customer retention?" serve a dual function. Firstly, they ensure you have accurately grasped the interviewer's intent. This prevents you from addressing a question you have not fully apprehended, which can precipitate misunderstandings and misinterpretations. Secondly, by rephrasing the question in your own parlance, you are subtly assuming ownership of the narrative. You are indicating that you are not merely passively receiving, but actively processing and framing the topic. This technique is particularly valuable when a question is broad or ambiguous. It affords you a moment to ascertain the specific angle the interviewer is interested in, enabling you to tailor your response with greater precision. It can also be employed to gently steer the conversation. For instance, if an interviewer poses a question that touches upon a sensitive area, you might respond, "That is an interesting point regarding X, and it prompts me to consider Y, which I believe is of even greater import to discuss at this juncture. Are you inclined to explore Y further?" Here, you have acknowledged the interviewer's question, but immediately pivoted to a subject you are more prepared to address or that you deem more critical. This represents a sophisticated application of listening. You have heard the question, understood its potential implications, and utilized your listening to forge an opportunity to introduce your own agenda. This exhibits an active engagement with the dialogue, revealing that you are listening intently and are capable of guiding the discussion toward areas where you can present yourself most effectively. It is about making the interviewer feel heard, while concurrently ensuring that your own voice and your chosen narrative remain paramount. Answering the analytical questions. How does the act of listening intently directly contribute to the interviewee's capacity to select which questions to address and maintain narrative command as per the book's central thesis? The connection is foundational. The book's central thesis posits that effective communication, particularly in interviews, is predicated on controlling the narrative by strategically choosing which questions to answer. This selection is rendered impossible without profound, intentional listening. When you listen intently, you are acquiring critical intelligence. You are decoding the interviewer's intent, identifying their underlying assumptions, and assessing the emotional tenor of the exchange. This intelligence directly informs your decision-making process. If you perceive a question that is poorly constructed, based on spurious premises, or designed to provoke a negative reaction. Your attentive listening allows you to recognize it as a question you might prefer not to answer directly. You can identify it as a potential snare or a diversion from your core message. Conversely, if a question aligns perfectly with your prepared narrative, or if it presents an avenue to accentuate a key strength, your listening will affirm this. It enables you to state, "Indeed, this is a question I wish to answer, and here is how I shall frame it to my advantage." In essence, listening transforms you from a reactive subject into a proactive strategist. You are no longer merely responding to external prompts. Instead, you are actively receiving input, analyzing it, and making deliberate choices about how to engage. This choice is the very definition of maintaining narrative control. You are not being overwhelmed by external pressures, you are managing them by strategically selecting your engagements and your talking points, all made feasible by the crucial initial step of truly listening. What are the specific physiological and psychological advantages for an interviewee who actively practices strategic pausing and careful listening, as opposed to immediate reaction? The advantages are profound and far-reaching. Physiologically, reacting instantaneously to a question frequently triggers the body's stress response. Chapter 2. The Dynamics of Interaction. 1. Learning from celebrity interviews. The world of celebrity interviews, often dismissed as mere entertainment, serves as a profound laboratory for dissecting the nuanced art of conversation. It is a crucible where individuals are subjected to a relentless barrage of questions, sometimes dozens in a single sitting, illuminated by the glare of Klieg lights and the gaze of millions. The lessons gleaned from these interactions, particularly when they unfold with grace and precision, offer invaluable insights for anyone aspiring to elevate their own communication prowess. The true mastery lies not in swiftness or encyclopedic knowledge, but in the subtle yet firm grip of control. Consider the archetypal interview. The interviewer typically initiates with a broad, open-ended query, such as, "So, tell us about your new film," or "What does it feel like to be back in the public eye?" The instinctive response is often to address the question directly, perhaps launching into a plot synopsis or a discourse on the pressures of fame. Yet observe closely and a fascinating pattern emerges. Many seasoned celebrities eschew a simple, direct answer. Instead, they seize the initial prompt as an opportune moment to pivot toward subjects they wish to explore. They might transmute a question about a film into a personal anecdote about the rigors of production, or a heartfelt reflection on the profound significance of a particular project. This is not an evasion of the question, but rather a strategic repurposing of it, a doorway to a narrative they have carefully crafted, or one that resonates with greater authenticity and impact. This is the very essence of strategic answering in practice. Rather than being a passive recipient of inquiry, the interviewee proactively steers the discourse toward their chosen thematic terrain, effectively answering the question they desired to be asked. Reflect upon the inherent energy dynamics within an interview. Interviewers, especially those presiding over rapid-fire talk shows, often exude a palpable intensity. They may lean forward, speak with accelerated cadence, and pose questions in quick succession. Should the interviewee merely mirror this heightened energy, a common pitfall awaits. The interviewee can feel rushed, their thoughts becoming disoriented, their very ability to articulate faltering. It is akin to attempting to keep pace with a marathon runner when one is trained only for a leisurely stroll. When perpetually striving to match another's tempo, particularly an elevated one, a sense of disarray can ensue. Overthinking becomes a constant companion, potentially leading to unintended pronouncements or, more acutely, a feeling of intellectual depletion. This reactive state, characterized by a desperate attempt to keep abreast of the interviewer's rhythm, stands in stark opposition to strategic answering. It signifies that the interviewer dictates the conversational flow, and the interviewee is merely struggling to avoid being left behind. This is precisely where the power of a controlled cadence becomes paramount. Certain celebrities, you may have observed, speak with a measured pace, their delivery imbued with a deliberate, almost artistic quality. They appear impervious to the interviewer's urgency. They maintain their own internal rhythm, their own distinct tempo. This is not an act of slowness, but a conscious assertion of control over one's own energy and timing. When this equilibrium is achieved, the space for clear thought expands. Responses become more considered, more precise, and an aura of serene confidence emanates. The interviewee is not beholden to the interviewer's tempo. They are establishing their own. This allows for the presentation of ideas with amplified impact and a diminished likelihood of misinterpretation or regrettable utterances. It is reminiscent of a skilled musician who, beyond merely executing notes, masterfully manipulates pauses and tempo to craft a sublime musical composition. They are not merely reacting to the score, they are interpreting it. The ultimate objective in these exchanges, whether formal interviews or informal conversations, is to subtly reframe the conversational landscape. Rather than consistently occupying the position of the questioned, the aim is to exert influence over the direction and tenor of the discussion. This is where the most adept communicators, including many luminaries of the entertainment world, truly distinguish themselves. They do not merely respond to questions, they artfully, or sometimes overtly, guide the interviewer. They might pose a reciprocal question, or share an anecdote that organically steers the conversation toward a new trajectory. When this maneuver is executed with finesse, the interviewer can become so engrossed in the interviewee's narrative that they begin to formulate questions that align with the story being told. It represents a reversal of the conventional power dynamic. The interviewee, through their controlled energy and strategic narrative, has succeeded in drawing the interviewer into their own frame of reference. This is the very essence of strategic answering, not merely responding, but leading. Let us consider a specific illustration. Envision a renowned actor being interviewed about a profoundly serious, dramatic role. The interviewer might pose, "Were you frightened during that intense scene?" A perfunctory answer would be a simple yes or no, followed by a brief elaboration. However, a celebrity employing strategic answering might reply, "You know, that scene was extraordinarily demanding, not only for me but for the entire cast and crew. We dedicated weeks to cultivating that atmosphere of palpable tension. I vividly recall one particular day. The weather was atrocious, and we were all huddled beneath these tarpaulins, awaiting the cessation of the downpour. It felt as though we were engaged in a genuine survival endeavor, and that shared experience, that profound sense of camaraderie in the face of adversity, actually amplified the scene's impact when we finally captured it on film." Observe the transformation that has occurred. The actor has not directly confessed to being frightened. Instead, they have acknowledged the scene's intensity, then deftly transitioned to a narrative detailing the filming challenges, the collaborative effort involved, and the shared experiential dimension. This story, while pertinent to the scene, does not directly address the frightened query. It implicitly answers a different question: what was the filming experience like? Or what were the principal challenges encountered on set? In doing so, the celebrity achieves several critical objectives. Firstly, they circumvent a potentially simplistic and unengaging response. Secondly, they offer a more captivating, humanizing account that underscores their dedication and the collaborative spirit inherent in filmmaking. Thirdly, they exert control over the narrative, emphasizing themes of diligence, teamwork, and artistic integrity, rather than dwelling solely on personal sentiments of fear. The interviewer, captivated by this compelling narrative, may then follow up with questions pertaining to the teamwork or the arduous conditions, effectively being drawn into the celebrity's chosen narrative framework. This exemplifies a masterful deployment of strategic answering, where the chosen response serves a purpose far exceeding the mere provision of a direct answer. Another manifestation of this principle is evident in how certain celebrities manage personal inquiries. Imagine a celebrity being questioned about a rumor or a private matter they prefer not to address. A reactive approach might involve defensiveness, anger, or a vague, unconvincing denial. This often precipitates more intrusive questioning and a sense of being cornered. However, a celebrity employing strategic answering might adopt a different tack. They might acknowledge the question obliquely, perhaps with a subtle smile or a knowing glance, and then pivot to a broader statement about the nature of privacy, the pressures of celebrity, or their unwavering commitment to their craft. For instance, if queried about a dating rumor, they might remark, "It's quite remarkable how much attention is lavished upon our personal lives. What truly ignites my enthusiasm at present is this new endeavor I'm undertaking. It's a narrative exploring resilience and the discovery of inner strength amidst adversity, and I believe audiences will find it deeply resonant." Here, the celebrity has neither confirmed nor refuted the rumor. Instead, they have acknowledged the subject of personal scrutiny and immediately redirected the conversation toward their professional sphere and a positive, inspiring theme. Their implicit message is, "That is not the focus of our discussion. What is paramount is my work, and here is why." This technique enables them to preserve their autonomy without appearing evasive or disingenuous. They are not answering the question about the rumor, but they are responding to a question about their current priorities and professional aspirations. This constitutes a potent method for safeguarding one's privacy while simultaneously engaging with the interviewer and the audience. The concept of energy synchronization, or its deliberate absence, also plays a pivotal role. Consider an interviewer who exhibits considerable energy, perhaps even a touch of aggression, and poses questions with palpable intensity. If the celebrity mirrors this intensity, they risk being ensnared in a vortex of conversational chaos. Their responses may become terse, abrupt, and less considered. They might feel compelled to fill every silence, leading to rambling discourse or pronouncements that lack coherence. This is the sensation of being in one's head, overanalyzing every utterance due to overwhelming external pressure. It is akin to attempting a serene conversation amidst the cacophony of a boisterous concert. The capacity for self-reflection is virtually obliterated. Conversely, when a celebrity maintains their own tranquil, deliberate cadence, a distinct dynamic emerges. They might pause before responding, take a slow, measured breath, and then articulate their thoughts in a controlled tone. This does not imply a lack of intellectual acuity. Rather, it signifies a deliberate choice to govern the pace. This intentional pause can, in fact, prompt the interviewer to decelerate as well. It creates a moment of contemplation, affording the interviewee the opportunity to formulate a more insightful and impactful response. Furthermore, it signals to the interviewer that the interviewee is in command of their own communication and will not be coerced into uttering something they have not fully contemplated. This self-possession is remarkably compelling and cultivates trust with the audience. It demonstrates that the celebrity is not easily disconcerted and possesses a clear conviction in their message. Reflect upon the archetypal artsy actors, those individuals who may speak with a slightly more languid pace, choose their words with meticulous care, and appear to inhabit their own contemplative realm. They rarely succumb to the interviewer's imposed framework. When presented with a generic query, they might offer a response that is poetic or philosophical, which, while not a direct answer to the literal question, is profoundly insightful and illuminates their unique perspective. Their intention is not to be evasive, but to engage in a richer, more nuanced form of communication. They are responding on a deeper stratum, sharing their distinctive worldview rather than merely providing a factual account. This represents the apex of sophisticated strategic answering. The capacity to subtly shift the conversational frame is a delicate yet potent skill. It is not an exercise in manipulation, but in deliberate intention. When one possesses a clear understanding of the message they wish to convey, they can gently guide the discourse. This may involve posing a clarifying question. Instead of responding immediately, one might inquire, "What precisely do you mean by that?" Or could you elaborate on what aspect you are most interested in hearing about? This provides a valuable moment for reflection and can also assist the interviewer in refining their query, potentially fostering a more productive dialogue. Employing transitional phrases, expressions such as, "That's a fascinating point, and it brings to mind," or "Before I address that directly, I wish to share something significant regarding," can facilitate a seamless shift in the conversation's direction. Recounting a pertinent anecdote, as exemplified by the film scenario, a judiciously chosen story can organically steer the conversation toward a desired outcome. Highlighting shared values, one can guide the conversation toward common ground, such as the importance of diligence, creativity, or community spirit. When a celebrity interview achieves its intended effect, it feels like an authentic exchange, despite its underlying structure. The interviewee emerges as articulate, thoughtful, and in command. They have not merely answered questions, they have presented a cohesive, compelling narrative about themselves and their work. This is the inherent power of strategic answering. It transforms an interview from a potentially adversarial interrogation into an opportunity for self-expression and narrative dominion. By observing these virtuosos of communication, we can cultivate our own interactions with enhanced confidence and efficacy, discerning not only what to articulate, but how and when to do so, and, most crucially, the narrative we aspire to impart. By meticulously examining the subtle intricacies of celebrity interviews, we have illuminated how individuals adeptly navigate the currents of interpersonal engagement. However, this cultivated mastery is not confined to the glare of the spotlight. The fundamental principles of controlled cadence and strategic narrative hold equal, if not greater, significance within the more intimate, yet equally complex, sphere of everyday social interactions, where the stakes of connection and mutual understanding are profoundly personal. 2. The power of nonverbal cues. We often mistake conversations and interviews for mere exchanges of verbiage. We meticulously craft our responses, rehearse our pronouncements, and fixate on the precise inquiries posed. Yet, beneath the audible stratum of spoken language flows a potent, often tacit, undercurrent, the realm of nonverbal communication. These silent signals, the carriage of one's frame, the depth of one's gaze, the timbre of one's voice, are the invisible filaments that intricately weave the tapestry of our interactions. They convey as much, if not more, import than the words themselves, and their comprehension is paramount to mastering the art of engagement. Consider this. Have you ever harbored a distinct impression of an individual before they uttered a significant utterance? Perhaps they entered a space with shoulders slumped, their eyes averted, and an immediate sense of their disquiet or self-doubt permeated the atmosphere. Or, conversely, perhaps they greeted you with a radiant smile, an open posture, and a firm handshake, instilling a feeling of trust and receptivity even before a single word had passed between you. These are the nonverbal cues in operation, forging an immediate imprint that colors all subsequent perceptions. Within the framework of the art of the unanswered question, the recognition and judicious deployment of these signals transcend mere politeness. They are instruments of control. They illuminate the unspoken lexicon that governs our mutual appraisal, empowering us to script our own contributions within its confines. The interviewer or conversational interlocutor is in perpetual motion, broadcasting signals. Their somatic language can betray their engagement, their ennui, their skepticism, or even their subtle attempts to steer the discourse. A fleeting frown, a restless foot, a subtle shift away, these may appear insignificant, yet they are potent fragments of intelligence. If you perceive yourself under duress from a particular query, and you observe the interviewer leaning forward, their brows subtly arched, they may be signaling impatience or a yearning for a more direct rejoinder. This is precisely where the concept of strategic answering assumes prominence. Rather than feeling compelled to immediately furnish a potentially discomfiting or irrelevant response, you can instead scrutinize these nonverbal indicators. You can discern their energy, their focus, and their implicit demands. This heightened awareness bestows upon you a precious interlude to deliberate your reply, not solely in its verbal articulation, but also in its nonverbal resonance. This leads us to the indispensable faculty of reading the room, or more precisely, discerning the interviewer. It necessitates becoming a keen observer of human behavior. During an interview, for instance, attend to the interviewer's bearing. Are they at ease or tense? Do they maintain consistent ocular contact, or do their eyes flit about? What is the rhythm of their respiration? Do they speak with alacrity or at a more deliberate cadence? These observations are not intended for judgment, but for the acquisition of intelligence. Should an interviewer exhibit an exceptionally high energy, a palpable buzz of anticipation, and you feel an instinctual urge to reciprocate that fervor, the transcript analysis serves as a stark reminder of its potential detriment. Attempting to match an interviewer's frenetic tempo can disrupt your own rhythm, leaving you flustered and reactive. Instead, by acknowledging their heightened energy, you can consciously elect to maintain your own more serene, deliberate cadence. This constitutes a form of strategic answering. You are not directly capitulating to their unspoken demand for effervescence, but rather, you are leveraging their nonverbal cue to inform your own measured response. This capacity to observe and interpret nonverbal signals directly influences the projection of your own confidence and command. When you are consciously attuned to your own somatic language, you can begin to sculpt the impression you create. Envision yourself in an interview, a knot of apprehension tightening in your stomach. Your instinct might be to fidget, to avert your gaze, to speak in a hushed, hesitant tone. These are all nonverbal declarations of uncertainty. However, by comprehending the potency of nonverbal cues, you can actively counteract these impulses. You can consciously straighten your spine, plant your feet with conviction, and establish steady, yet not aggressive, eye contact. You can inhale deeply before speaking, allowing your voice to settle into a more grounded timbre. These actions are not about artifice, but about employing your physical presence to bolster your internal state and to communicate composure. When you emanate this tranquil, unwavering presence, you subtly influence the interviewer's perception of you. They are more inclined to view you as someone in command, capable of withstanding pressure, and therefore, worthy of their attention. This nonverbal assurance can grant you the latitude necessary to engage in strategic answering, affording you the time to collect your thoughts and select the most efficacious mode of response, rather than being impelled into a suboptimal reply. The judicious application of silence and pauses represents another formidable nonverbal instrument. In our cultural milieu, an unspoken pressure often exists to fill every void. We experience discomfort in conversational laconie and hasten to speak. However, a strategically placed pause can be profoundly impactful. When presented with a question, rather than immediately launching into an answer, pause for a moment. Observe the interviewer, perhaps nod thoughtfully, and then pause. This pause accomplishes several objectives. Firstly, it signals that you are not merely reacting, but contemplating. It communicates that you are affording the question due consideration. Secondly, it can engender a sense of anticipation. The interviewer may lean forward, curious about the insightful response that is poised to emerge. Crucially, this pause allows you to recalibrate your own internal equilibrium. It grants you a moment to access your inner state, to recall your objective, and to select the most advantageous path forward. It is a method of preserving your own rhythm, of refusing to be swept into the interviewer's tempo. This deliberate pause is a manifestation of strategic answering. You are not directly addressing the question in that instant, but rather, you are employing the silence to govern the flow and prepare your more considered rejoinder. The concept of mirroring is frequently discussed in communication as a means of fostering rapport. Mirroring entails the subtle adoption of certain nonverbal behaviors of the other person, their posture, their gestures, their vocal intonation. It can cultivate a sense of connection and mutual understanding. However, the transcript analysis offers a critical caveat. Mirroring an interviewer's high energy output can prove detrimental. This is where the strategic element of strategic answering becomes indispensable. While some degree of mirroring can forge connection, overindulgence, or mirroring in a manner that compromises your own energy and cadence can prove a snare. Imagine an interviewer who speaks with great rapidity and employs animated gestures. If you attempt to replicate that precise level of intensity, you risk becoming equally frenetic and forfeiting your own composure. A strategic approach is not about becoming a perfect echo, but about selective mirroring. You might subtly adopt a similar posture to convey engagement, or you might match the intent behind a gesture rather than its exact form. The objective is to construct a bridge of connection without sacrificing your own self-possession. It is about demonstrating comprehension and presence without being overwhelmed by the other person's dynamism. This enables you to maintain your own distinct presence, which is fundamental to strategic answering. You are present, you are connected, yet you remain the architect of your own narrative. Let us delve deeper into how an individual can consciously modulate their own nonverbal signals to project confidence and control, even when experiencing internal pressure or uncertainty. It commences with a simple, yet profound, act of self-awareness. When you detect that familiar tremor of anxiety, that constricting sensation in your chest, acknowledge it. Do not suppress it, but observe it. Then make a deliberate choice about how you wish to appear. This is not an exercise in deception, but in aligning your outward presentation with your desired internal state. If you feel nervous, your instinct may be to contract, to diminish your physical presence. The strategic countermeasure is to do the opposite. Sit straighter. Imagine a thread drawing you upward from the crown of your head. This simple adjustment of posture can exert a remarkable influence on your own physiology and on how others perceive you. It signals to your brain that you are in a more confident state, and it communicates to the interviewer that you are present and engaged. Eye contact is another potent instrument. In many cultures, direct ocular engagement signifies honesty and self-assurance. However, it necessitates a delicate equilibrium. Sustained, unwavering scrutiny can feel aggressive or intimidating. The art lies in maintaining a comfortable, steady gaze. This entails looking at the interviewer when they are speaking, and looking at them when you are speaking. It does not imply gazing without blinking or without occasional shifts of focus. It signifies conveying that you are present and engaged with them, not lost in introspection or seeking an escape. When you feel pressured by a question, your natural inclination may be to break eye contact, to look downward or away. This nonverbal cue can communicate uncertainty or even guilt. By consciously choosing to maintain eye contact, even when it feels challenging, you project an aura of self-assurance. You are communicating, wordlessly, I am here, I am listening, and I am not afraid to engage. Vocal tone is of equal consequence. A hesitant, wavering voice can undermine even the most meticulously constructed words. When you experience pressure, your voice may ascend in pitch or become breathy. The strategic approach is to focus on grounding your voice. Before you speak, take that deep inhalation and exhale it slowly. This aids in stabilizing your vocal cords. Endeavor to speak from your diaphragm rather than from your throat. This imbues your voice with a richer, more resonant quality. Even a subtle shift towards a lower, more steady pitch can render you more confident and authoritative. Consider a seasoned news anchor or a respected professor. Their vocal delivery often conveys a sense of calm authority, irrespective of the subject matter. You can cultivate this by practicing speaking at a measured pace, enunciating your words with clarity, and allowing for natural pauses. This vocal control is a direct manifestation of maintaining your own cadence, a foundational tenet of strategic answering. Now, let us examine the specific nonverbal cues that can betray an interviewer's or conversationalist's underlying intentions or emotional state, and how these insights can be harnessed. Microexpressions, those ephemeral facial contortions lasting mere fractions of a second, can be extraordinarily revelatory. A fleeting flash of annoyance, a hint of surprise, or a flicker of skepticism can communicate more than an extended discourse. For instance, if you are discussing a particular project and you observe a microexpression of doubt cross the interviewer's face, As you mention a specific detail, it is a signal. It indicates that this particular detail may be a point of concern for them, or perhaps it is an area where they lack comprehension. Instead of disregarding it, you can leverage this insight. You might then elect to elaborate on that detail, perhaps offering a different perspective or providing further substantiation for your assertion. This is strategic answering. You have utilized a nonverbal cue to identify a potential vulnerability or area of interest, and you have proactively addressed it, guiding the conversation in a manner that fortifies your position. Subtle shifts in posture can also furnish valuable indications. If an interviewer is reclining in their chair with their arms crossed, it may signify defensiveness or disagreement. Conversely, if they lean forward, uncross their arms, and perhaps nod in assent, they are signaling openness and engagement. If you observe the former, it is a cue to perhaps rephrase your point, offer an alternative angle, or even acknowledge their potential reservation. For example, you might state, "I understand that this might appear to be a complex approach, but allow me to elucidate the underlying logic." This acknowledges their nonverbal signal without directly confronting it, and it creates an opening for you to present your case more effectively. If you observe the latter, the leaning forward, the nodding, it is a green light to continue with your current line of reasoning, perhaps even expanding upon it, as you have established a positive connection. Vocal inflections are equally significant. Observe the pitch, tempo, and volume of the interviewer's voice. A sudden drop in pitch or a deceleration of pace may indicate a waning of interest or an impending pivot to a new subject. A sharp increase in volume or a more accelerated tempo could signal excitement or, conversely, frustration. If you notice a listener's voice becoming flatter or slower, it may be an indication that your current explanation is overly technical, excessively lengthy, or simply failing to resonate. This is your cue to alter your approach. You might simplify your language, offer a concise summation, or pose a clarifying question such as, "Does that make sense?" to gauge their comprehension. By interpreting these vocal cues, you can adapt your communication in real time. 3. Energy matching in conversations. We are, in essence, born with an innate echo chamber. It is a profoundly human inclination, a deeply ingrained instinct, to reflect the individuals with whom we engage. Consider this: when a smile is offered, a reciprocal smile often follows. If speech is rapid and imbued with palpable enthusiasm, one may find oneself mirroring that accelerated tempo and vibrant energy. This mirroring, this unconscious choreography of aligning body language, vocal inflection, and even emotional resonance, is the bedrock of connection. It is how we signal comprehension, empathy, and belonging. It is a foundational element in our development of social harmony. This instinct for mirroring proves extraordinarily advantageous across numerous facets of life. It fosters a sense of being understood and cultivates the capacity to understand others. It serves as the adhesive that binds friendships and families. However, within the nuanced discipline of communication, particularly when clarity, confidence, and control are paramount, this very same instinct can transmute into a formidable impediment. It can steer us toward a trajectory where our individual voice, our unique rhythm, and ultimately, our inherent power are compromised. Envision an important interview. You have diligently prepared, meticulously rehearsed, and feel poised for the occasion. Then, the interviewer leans forward, their voice resonating with volume and velocity, their inquiries cascading one after another with unflagging intensity. What is your immediate impulse? For the vast majority, it is to reciprocate. You might find yourself speaking with increased haste, amplifying your vocal projection, striving to keep pace with their tempo. A palpable pressure emerges to emulate their fervor, their dynamism. This phenomenon is what we term high energy entrapment. When ensnared by this predicament, our natural inclination to mirror can precipitate a state of profound overwhelm. Our words begin to tumble out prematurely, our thoughts become disarrayed, and lucidity dissipates. It is akin to attempting a marathon at the speed of a sprinter. exhaustion, and depletion will swiftly ensue. This ceaseless endeavor to match a heightened energy level is extraordinarily taxing. It consumes all your cognitive faculties, leaving precious little capacity for lucid thought, for the formulation of considered responses, or for subtly guiding the discourse toward a mutually beneficial outcome. A disconcerting sense of artifice may even arise, as if you are enacting a persona that feels fundamentally inauthentic. This is the antithesis of our objective in any critical exchange. Thus, what are the telltale signs that you are succumbing to this trap? Physiologically, you might detect an accelerated heartbeat, your respiration becoming shallow and rapid. Your thoughts may seem to race, impeding your ability to concentrate on any single element. You might even experience a physical sensation of breathlessness during speech, irrespective of actual exertion. Psychologically, a wave of apprehension may wash over you, a persistent feeling of being perpetually on the defensive, or a gnawing doubt regarding your adequacy or your capacity to keep pace. These are all indicators that your inherent mirroring instinct has assumed dominance, and you have relinquished command of your conversational energy. The central tenet of strategic answering posits that you are not beholden to the energy levels of others. You possess the agency to establish your own tempo, your own rhythm. This is not an invitation to passivity or disengagement. Rather, it is an affirmation of presence, albeit on your own terms. It is about preserving your internal cadence, your own steady pulse, even when the surrounding environment is characterized by frenetic movement. Consider the virtuoso musician within a grand orchestra. They do not merely defer to the loudest instrument or the most rapid tempo. They execute their part with precision, imbuing it with their distinctive touch, contributing to the collective harmony without sacrificing their individual voice. Similarly, in discourse, you can elect to maintain your own deliberate pace. This affords you the mental latitude to truly apprehend the question, to process its nuances, and to construct a reply that is lucid, precise, and impactful. It provides the necessary breathing room for contemplation, for judicious pauses, and for ensuring that your utterances land with the intended resonance. When you consciously choose to uphold your own cadence, you cultivate resilience. You become less susceptible to being disconcerted or derailed by another's intensity. You remain anchored, much like a steadfast tree that can weather a tempest. This unwavering presence can also subtly recalibrate the power dynamic. Instead of perpetually reacting to the momentum of the other party, you begin to cultivate an environment where your own communication style dictates the tenor. You are not merely responding to inquiries, you are actively shaping the conversation. This leads us to another crucial consideration, the recognition of individuals who may function as energy siphons. Some persons, whether intentionally or not, possess an uncanny ability to draw others into their conversational orbit, compelling them to adopt their pace and emotional state. They can resemble a vortex, draining your vitality and leaving you feeling depleted. Awareness of this pattern is the initial step toward its circumvention. Attend to your subjective experience during an exchange. Do you feel drained? Do you feel rushed? Are your own thoughts and sentiments overshadowed by those of the other person? If the answer is affirmative, it may signify that you are being inexorably drawn into their energetic field. Rather than attempting to match their heightened energy, the strategic approach often entails strategic energy dampening, or more accurately, the preservation of your own consistent energy. This does not necessitate a reduction in vocal volume or a drastic deceleration if such actions feel unnatural. It signifies being present and responsive, yet unconsumed by the other person's impetus. It is about identifying your own comfortable rhythm and adhering to it. How might one cultivate this proficiency? It demands conscious effort and foresight. Prior to an important discussion or interview, dedicate a moment to grounding yourself. Engage in a few deep, slow breaths. Focus on your internal rhythm. Remind yourself that you are not obligated to mirror anyone else's energy. You can embody calmness, confidence, and deliberate intent while remaining fully engaged. During the conversation, If you perceive yourself being drawn into a more accelerated tempo, consciously introduce a brief interlude. Take a sip of water. Allow your mind to catch up. These small instances of deliberate control can yield profound transformations. I recall, for instance, an interview I conducted years ago with a highly esteemed journalist. She was exceptionally astute, spoke with remarkable speed, and her questions arrived like a barrage of rapid-fire projectiles. My initial inclination was to accelerate my own speech, to attempt to match her pace, to respond before she had even completed her query. I felt myself becoming flustered, my answers growing terse and disjointed. My focus was so consumed by the effort of keeping up that I entirely lost sight of my intended message. I was so absorbed by her energy that I neglected my own. By the interview's conclusion, I felt utterly exhausted and knew I had not performed to my fullest potential. I had permitted her energy to dictate the entire interaction. Subsequently, I encountered a comparable scenario, but this time I drew upon that prior experience. The interviewer possessed an equal measure of dynamism, yet I consciously resolved to approach it differently. As she commenced her volley of questions, I drew a slow, measured breath. I did not hasten my responses. I allowed for a brief pause following each question, not out of hesitation, but from a deliberate choice to consolidate my thoughts. I spoke at my natural cadence, my voice steady and clear. It felt unconventional initially, akin to swimming against a powerful current. Yet, as I persisted, I observed a remarkable shift. The interviewer, rather than exhibiting impatience, seemed to adapt. She began to listen with greater attentiveness. My calm, deliberate pace enabled her to absorb my answers more distinctly, and it provided me with the space to interweave the points I wished to convey, even if they diverged from her direct line of inquiry. I was not merely answering her questions, I was narrating my own story. I departed from that interview feeling invigorated, not depleted, and confident that I had presented myself effectively. I had employed the art of strategic answering, not by providing flawless responses to every query, but by governing the flow and asserting my own presence. This capacity to maintain your own energy and cadence is a potent instrument. It enables you to remain composed under duress. It ensures that your thoughts are articulated with clarity and precision. It grants you the discretion to identify which questions genuinely serve your narrative and which might be addressed more obliquely, or even deferred. It is about occupying the driver's seat of your own communication, rather than being a passenger swept along by another's momentum. Ultimately, the art of the unanswered question transcends mere omission. It encompasses the judicious management of what you do articulate and how you conduct yourself while doing so. By comprehending the dynamics of energy alignment and by deliberately choosing to preserve your own rhythm, you can fundamentally transform your interactions. You can transition from a reactive state characterized by a perpetual struggle to keep pace to a proactive stance where you are the conductor of the conversation. This control empowers you to present yourself with heightened confidence, clarity, and impact, ensuring that your message and your very presence resonates long after the question has faded. This insight propels us toward an exploration of how this controlled presence can be leveraged to actively shape the narrative, which will be the focus of our subsequent section. 4. Handling difficult questions. In the crucible of conversation and interview, we often encounter questions that descend like sudden tempests. They may be barbed, unjust, or simply unsettling. These are the interrogations we commonly label difficult. They possess the power to ensnare us, to leave us disoriented, or to strip us of our sense of command. Yet, herein lies a profound revelation. These moments, though fraught with challenge, are in truth potent junctures of opportunity. They are not snares designed for our undoing, but rather avenues through which we can manifest our resilience and our acumen. Envision a virtuoso dancer. When the music abruptly shifts its cadence, they do not falter, but instead weave that alteration into a more captivating movement. When a thorny question arises, your primal impulse might be to succumb to panic or to offer an immediate perhaps, ill-considered response. This is the phenomenon of reactive answering, a mere yielding to whatever is cast your way. However, the discipline of strategic answering imparts a different wisdom. It impresses upon us the understanding that we are not obligated to address every question precisely as it is posed. Rather, we possess the agency to select which inquiries to engage and the manner of our engagement, all while subtly guiding the discourse toward a trajectory that serves our purpose. This is not an endorsement of disingenuousness or evasion. It is the assertion of sovereignty over one's own narrative and the artful presentation of oneself in the most advantageous light. What, then, imbues a question with the character of difficulty? Frequently, it is its proximity to a sensitive vein, a subject matter for which we are ill-prepared, or a point that could be weaponized against us. Such inquiries can feel akin to an assault. They may carry an accusatory tone, delve with undue intrusion into personal territories, or be gratuitously tangential, engineered to destabilize us. The underlying psychological architecture that renders these questions so formidable is often rooted in our innate yearning for approval, our desire to be perceived as capable, and our aversion to conflict. A difficult question can imperil all these aspirations. It can engender feelings of being scrutinized, exposed, or misunderstood. We harbor the apprehension that an incorrect response will precipitate adverse repercussions, be it the forfeiture of a professional prospect, the erosion of a relationship, or simply the sting of mortification. Yet, by comprehending this apprehension, we can begin to master it. Instead of perceiving a difficult question as a personal affront, endeavor to view it as a complex puzzle. The interrogator harbors a rationale, a motivation. Perhaps their curiosity is genuine, perhaps they are assessing your knowledge or your composure, or perhaps they are projecting their own insecurities. By recognizing that the question emanates from a specific origin, you can commence the formulation of your rejoinder. This is the juncture where the efficacy of the pause and the pivot becomes paramount. The pause is your clandestine advantage. When a challenging question lands, suppress the urge to respond instantaneously. Draw a breath. A brief, deliberate interlude can yield remarkable results. It signals that you are not unnerved. It affords you a moment to marshal your thoughts, to appraise the question, and to devise your stratagem. This fleeting silence can, in fact, transmute the conversational dynamic. The questioner may even begin to experience a modicum of uncertainty, pondering whether they have overstepped or if you are poised to deliver a brilliant riposte. This pause is not in void, it is replete with intention. It is your reclamation of temporal dominion. Following the pause, you may deploy the pivot. A pivot is a subtle redirection. It resembles the steering of a vessel. One eschews abrupt, jarring maneuvers for smooth, controlled turns. You might pivot by reframing the question or by establishing a connection to a subject you are more adept at discussing. For instance, if confronted with a pointed inquiry regarding a past misstep, rather than fixating on the error itself, you could pivot to the lessons gleaned from it. You are not evading the question, but rather electing to accentuate the more constructive, forward-looking facet. This leads us to a pivotal concept within strategic answering, addressing the spirit rather than the letter of the question. Frequently, a difficult question is not truly about the precise verbiage employed, but rather about the underlying concern or intent that animates it. If someone inquires, "Why did you falter on that project?" their authentic preoccupation may be, "Are you inherently capable of success? Or can you surmount obstacles?" Instead of becoming ensnared in the minutiae of the failure, you can address the spirit of the question by articulating your resilience, your problem-solving prowess, or your approach to challenges. You are responding to the fundamental need for reassurance or information, but on your own terms. Let us consider an illustration. Imagine yourself in a job interview, and the interviewer poses, "We have encountered some whispers suggesting that your departure from your previous company was under acrimonious circumstances. Could you elaborate on that?" This is a quintessential difficult question. Your immediate reaction might be to adopt a defensive posture or to attempt to dispel the rumors, which can convey an impression of weakness. However, with strategic answering, you can adopt a different approach. First, the pause. Take a breath. Then acknowledge the concern. You might state, "I comprehend your reason for inquiring about that, as it is crucial to ascertain a suitable alignment for both parties." This demonstrates that you are not intimidated by the question and that you respect their due diligence. Subsequently, execute the pivot. Rather than dwelling on the acrimonious circumstances, you could articulate, "My departure from my prior role was a mutual accord, impelled by a desire to pursue novel avenues that more closely resonated with my long-term professional aspirations. Indeed, it was during that transition that I significantly refined my proficiency in mention a skill relevant to the new job, a capability I believe would prove a considerable asset here." You have acknowledged the question, but you have skillfully steered the conversation toward your strengths and future potential, effectively answering the underlying query regarding your competence without becoming entangled in the complexities of past difficulties. This technique of employing empathy and acknowledgement is extraordinarily potent. When you utter phrases such as, "I understand why you are asking that," or "that is a valid point," you are validating the questioner's perspective. This can instantly disarm them. It signifies that you are attentive, that you are considering their viewpoint, and that you are not dismissive. This cultivates a connection, a bridge of mutual understanding, even if you do not concur with the premise of their inquiry. Once that bridge is established, it becomes considerably easier to guide the conversation. Reflect on a time when you felt genuinely heard. It typically involves someone acknowledging your sentiments or your point of view. Applying this principle in challenging dialogues means you are not merely reacting, you are actively engaging with the other person's emotional landscape. This can be particularly effective when the questioner is operating from a position of suspicion or apprehension. By exhibiting empathy, you can frequently dissipate that suspicion and render them more receptive to your perspective. The bridge serves as a specific instrument within the pivot. It is a phrase or a sentence that links the difficult question you have just received to the subject you wish to discuss. It is a seamless transition, not a jarring interruption. For instance, if questioned about a controversial opinion you once espoused, you could employ a bridge such as, "Looking back at that period, I have acquired a profound understanding of the intricate nature of these matters. What has become even more significant to me now is mention a related, but more positive or current topic." The bridge allows you to acknowledge the past, but then to step into the present or future, where you possess greater control and can showcase your growth or current thinking. The energy and nonverbal cues you project in these situations are as critical as your verbalizations. When confronted with a difficult question, it is facile for your body language to betray your internal disquiet. You might fidget, avert your gaze, or stiffen. This is where an understanding of the psychological drivers proves invaluable. If you are aware that a question elicits anxiety, you can consciously endeavor to project an aura of composure. Sit upright, maintain steady eye contact without an unnerving stare, and speak in a measured cadence. These physical signals convey a powerful message: you are in command, you are self-assured, and you are not intimidated. Your energy is yours to manage, and projecting confidence can, in fact, influence the questioner to feel more at ease and more receptive to your responses. Consider those celebrated interviews where a celebrity is subjected to a deeply personal or contentious question. You will frequently observe them take a breath, perhaps offer a faint smile, and then deliver a response that is both direct and artful, often transforming the question into a statement about their values or their life's journey. They are not necessarily answering the question in the manner the interviewer might have hoped for a sensational headline, but they are responding in a way that serves their own narrative and safeguards their public persona. This is strategic answering in practice. They are choosing to answer the question they wish had been posed, a question that permits them to highlight their strengths or their resilience. The analytical query of how to comprehend the underlying psychological drivers is fundamental. It necessitates empathy and keen observation. When someone poses a difficult question, attempt to momentarily detach yourself and consider, what might they be apprehensive about? What are they striving to achieve? Are they seeking validation? Are they in pursuit of information unobtainable elsewhere? Are they attempting to provoke a reaction? If they seek validation, acknowledging their concern may be the most effective course of action. If they are seeking information, you can furnish it in a manner framed by your narrative. If they are attempting to provoke a reaction, the optimal strategy is often to remain serene and composed, thereby denying them the reaction they crave and consequently diffusing the situation. For instance, if a journalist interrogates a politician with a question designed to expose a past scandal, the politician might discern that the journalist aims to craft a sensational narrative. The politician's objective, then, is not to dwell on the scandal but to deny the journalist the sensationalism. They might achieve this by offering a concise, factual answer and then immediately pivoting to their policy proposals or their vision for the future. They are answering the question, but they are also actively controlling the narrative and refusing to be defined by a singular, potentially damaging event. Ultimately, navigating difficult questions is an art form. It involves recognizing that you possess more influence in a conversation than you might initially believe. It is about understanding that your response is not predetermined by the question itself. By cultivating the pause, mastering the pivot, and focusing on the spirit of the question, you can transmute moments of potential discomfort into opportunities to demonstrate your intelligence, your grace, and your command. You are not merely reacting to the conversation, you are shaping it. This is the very essence of strategic answering, being thoughtful, deliberate, and in control of your own communicative trajectory. 5. The role of silence in communication. We often conceive of communication as a ceaseless torrent, words cascading from one mind to another. Yet, what if the most profound moments reside not in the deluge, but in the tranquil shores? What if the hushed intervals, the liminal spaces between our thoughts, harbor an arcane potency? Herein lies our exploration into the sophisticated art of silence and discourse. Recall a moment when a conversation felt unduly hurried. Perhaps a query was posed, and before the question could fully resolve in your consciousness, an insistent pressure to respond arose. Words then spilled forth, perhaps misrepresenting your true sentiment, or leaving you feeling that you had not offered your most considered reply. This is the consequence of a dread of silence. We perceive it as an void, a symptom of inadequacy, or a lapse in command. But what if our perspective were to shift? What if silence were not an absence, but a deliberate instrument? Within the crucible of interviews, or indeed any significant exchange, the individual who orchestrates the cadence invariably shapes the outcome. And silence is an indispensable component of that rhythm. When you deliberately pause before articulating an answer, it is akin to a gentle yet resolute hand upon the tiller. It signals not mere reaction, but considered deliberation. It proclaims mastery over your own mental terrain. This quiescent interval communicates to the other party, I am weighing this with care. My response will be imbued with thought. It manifests a serene assurance, a self-possession that requires no amplification to exert influence. This is the inaugural revelation of strategic silence. It is an emblem of control and self-possession. It stands in stark opposition to being flustered. It signifies an anchor of composure. Envision a virtuoso narrator. They do not merely rush through the unfolding plot. They understand precisely when to pause for dramatic resonance, when to allow a poignant sentiment to permeate, or when to escalate suspense before unveiling a surprise. Silence, in our dialogues, can serve a parallel function. It possesses the capacity to sculpt our narrative. If you have just articulated a point of considerable import, a brief interlude thereafter can imbue that assertion with greater prominence. It grants the listener the temporal latitude to truly absorb and comprehend your pronouncement. It is as if a spotlight has been cast upon your words. At times, a fleeting silence preceding your utterance can cultivate an atmosphere of keen anticipation. You have meticulously constructed towards a pivotal disclosure, and that ephemeral quietude before the delivery of crucial information amplifies its subsequent impact. It mirrors the pregnant hush before a musician unleashes a resonant chord. The preceding silence renders the ensuing sound all the more striking. This is not an endorsement of sluggishness. It is an advocacy for intentionality. It is about leveraging the quietude to imbue your words with consequence. Let us examine its practical application. I recall a nascent journalist, whom we shall name Mia, undertaking an interview with a prominent yet notoriously recalcitrant politician. This dignitary was known for his evasiveness. Maya had meticulously prepared a series of incisive, direct interrogations. The initial inquiries proceeded as anticipated, but then she posed a question concerning a contentious decision. The politician paused, averted his gaze, and then embarked on a protracted, circuitous exposition that artfully sidestepped the crux of Maya's inquiry. Mia, feeling the imperative to maintain the interview's momentum, allowed him to discourse, her internal chronometer accelerating with each passing second. By its conclusion, she felt she had failed to elicit the unvarnished truth, and the politician appeared to have effortlessly navigated the discourse away from his own accountability. Maya felt depleted, her vitality sapped by the politician's adroitness in dictating the tempo, and her own inability to carve out the space for a more incisive rejoinder. She had been reactive, not strategic. Contrast this with an alternative scenario. A seasoned negotiator, Mr. Davies, found himself in a high-stakes deliberation. He was confronted with a demand that struck him as patently unreasonable. His immediate inclination, akin to that of many, might have been to swiftly register an objection or proffer a counter-proposal. Yet Mr. Davies abstained. He simply regarded the individual presenting the demand, his countenance etched with thoughtful consideration, and maintained an eloquent silence for what felt like an extended interval. He displayed neither anger nor dismissiveness. He was observing, processing, and allowing the gravity of the demand to settle. This pause accomplished several objectives. It conveyed to the other party that their demand was being accorded serious consideration, but it also afforded Mr. Davies the indispensable time required to marshal his thoughts. He was not compelled to react impulsively. He was then at liberty to respond with a calm, measured counteroffer that addressed the underlying issue without resorting to aggression. The silence had empowered him to reassert his composure and husband his cognitive resources, thereby enabling him to respond strategically, rather than reactively. This encapsulates the very essence of strategic answering, not merely to respond, but to judiciously select how and when to respond, and to leverage the interstitial spaces surrounding one's pronouncements to one's advantage. This leads us to another critical dimension: silence as a mechanism for energy conservation. In situations fraught with pressure, such as a job interview or a challenging dialogue, the compulsion to fill every quiescent moment can be profoundly overwhelming. This incessant need to generate verbiage can rapidly deplete one's mental reserves. One begins to speak with undue haste, one's thoughts become entangled, and one may utter sentiments one subsequently regrets. Strategic silence functions as a deliberate exhalation. It is a moment for recalibration, for the soothing of frayed nerves, and for the prevention of being swept along by the other party's velocity. By eschewing the obligation to respond instantaneously, one preserves one's cognitive faculties. One can think with greater clarity, forge connections between ideas more effectively, and present oneself in a manner that is both more considered and more controlled. This is fundamentally about maintaining one's own intrinsic rhythm. The overarching thesis here is the mastery of narrative flow through the preservation of one's own vitality and cadence, rather than succumbing to external pressures. Silence stands as a formidable ally in this pursuit. It permits one to remain centered, to circumvent the imposition of the interviewer's or interlocutor's rhythm, and to ensure that one's responses are both deliberate and impactful. Silence can also serve as a catalyst for profound engagement. At times, the most efficacious response is not an immediate verbalization. If a question lacks clarity, a moment of silence can actually prompt the questioner to rephrase or elucidate it more effectively. They may recognize their own lack of precision. It is a subtle means of soliciting clarification without the explicit declaration, "I do not comprehend." In social contexts, a thoughtful pause subsequent to a statement can impel the speaker towards self-reflection on their own pronouncements. It can engender a moment of introspection for them, thereby fostering a more meaningful exchange. Silence also affords the opportunity for keen observation. While one is silently contemplating a response, one can meticulously attend to the other party's nonverbal cues, their facial expressions, and the subtle signals they are transmitting. This intelligence can prove exceptionally valuable in formulating one's subsequent course of action. Now, let us delve into the finer points. What should be the duration of this strategic silence? Herein lies the true artistry. A silence that is too brief may lack sufficient impact. It might be perceived merely as a momentary hesitation. Conversely, a silence that extends for too long can devolve into awkwardness. It can render the other party uneasy, or they may feel compelled to fill it themselves, potentially subverting your intended effect. The optimal duration is frequently contingent upon the context, the personalities involved, and the specific nature of the query. In an interview setting, a pause of 3 to 5 seconds can carry considerable weight. It is sufficiently prolonged to signal contemplation, yet not so protracted as to engender undue tension. In a more informal exchange, the rhythm may naturally differ. It is about cultivating an acute awareness of the natural ebb and flow, and discerning when a subtle pause will enhance rather than disrupt the conversational tapestry. The inherent risk, of course, always exists. Yet, the reward, the control, the thoughtfulness, the impact, frequently justifies the calculated gamble. Silence can also be employed to subtly reorient the trajectory of a conversation. Imagine being posed a question that you perceive as leading you down an undesirable path. Rather than directly stating, "I decline to address that," or offering a weak, evasive reply, you can strategically deploy silence. A pause can afford you the mental respite to pivot your thinking. You might then utilize your response to address a related, yet more advantageous, facet of the subject matter. For instance, if interrogated about a past transgression in a manner that feels accusatory, a brief silence could enable you to marshal your thoughts and subsequently respond by emphasizing what you gleaned from that experience and how you have subsequently evolved, thereby effectively shifting the focus from the transgression itself to your resilience and personal development. This represents a form of strategic answering where one addresses a question that one wished had been posed, or reframes the one that was. It is also profoundly illuminating to consider how an interviewer's own deployment of silence can betray their underlying intentions. An interviewer adept at creating conversational space might deliberately employ silence to encourage elaboration, to prompt deeper exploration, or even to elicit revelations that might otherwise remain undisclosed. They may be anticipating your willingness to fill the lacunae, hoping you will volunteer more information than you initially intended. Conversely, an interviewer who exhibits discomfort with silence may hasten to fill it, perhaps due to personal nervousness or because they seek to unilaterally control the narrative and are disinclined to grant you ample time for reflection. Observing these patterns in others can serve as an invaluable lesson in the operative dynamics of silence in communication. Let us revisit Maya, the nascent journalist. Following her less than optimal interview, she commenced an in-depth study of the methodologies employed by seasoned interviewers. She observed how certain preeminent figures, upon posing a question, would refrain from immediately proceeding to the next. They would simply await a response, maintaining eye contact, and that quiescent interval would frequently impel the interviewee to append a detail, offer a qualification, or even divulge a nuance they had not initially contemplated. Mia apprehended that her own apprehension of silence had engendered a forfeiture of opportunities. She had been so singularly fixated on obtaining an answer that she had neglected to cultivate the fertile ground for the optimal answer. In her subsequent interview with a different political figure, Mia applied this newfound understanding. She posed a complex question pertaining to policy. The politician commenced his reply, but his response was somewhat nebulous. Instead of immediately posing a follow-up inquiry, Mia simply waited. She sustained eye contact, her expression neutral yet attentive. The politician, perhaps sensing the expectant pause, hesitated momentarily and then appended a crucial detail concerning the funding mechanism, a detail Mia had not foreseen and which significantly augmented the substance of her report. The silence had performed the work for her. It had encouraged the politician to be more forthcoming, and it had enabled Mia to maintain her own demeanor of calm and control. This is the tangible manifestation of strategic answering. It is not about evading inquiries. It is about mastering the interstitial space surrounding them. It is about comprehending that communication transcends the mere utterance of words. It encompasses the pauses we judiciously select, the rhythms we meticulously establish, and the energy we consciously manage. Silence, when wielded with intent, transmutes into a potent form of communication in its own right, a testament to one's confidence, one's perspicacity, and one's command over the narrative. It empowers one to circumvent being overwhelmed by external pressures and to present oneself in a manner that is both more considered and more impactful. Having thoroughly examined the potency of what remains unsaid, we now direct our focus towards the art of the strategic question itself, the methodology for anticipating, reframing, and even formulating inquiries that empower the communicator and further solidify their dominion over the narrative. Conclusion: we have journeyed together through the intricate choreography of dialogue, often feeling that insistent, invisible pull to banish every silence, furnish an answer for every query. But what if the true mastery, the profound artistry, resides not merely in the act of responding, but in the discerning wisdom of which questions to address? This volume has beckoned you to cast your gaze beyond the superficial exchange of words, to plumb the deeper currents that sculpt our interactions. For too long, many of us have approached conversations and interrogations as a frantic relay, compelled to seize the baton of each question and sprint forth, irrespective of the destination. This reactive posture can leave us depleted, disoriented, and a far cry from the assured communicators we aspire to embody. We risk forfeiting our own rhythm, our own vitality, and our core message becomes a casualty of the scramble. This is not an endorsement of evasion or artifice. It is an acknowledgement that authentic communication is a form of sovereignty, a means to orchestrate the flow and present oneself with unassailable clarity and purpose. Herein lies the genesis of strategic answering. It is a cultivated discipline, a deliberate process of discernment. It necessitates an understanding of which inquiries serve your overarching narrative, which illuminate your strengths, and which possess the potential to derail your intended course. It involves an astute observation of subtle social cues, a keen attunement to the energy exchange, and then, with resolute intention, the assertion of your own tempo and focus. This approach liberates you from the vulnerability of being caught unawares, empowers you to steer the conversation's trajectory, and enables you to project an image of enhanced thoughtfulness and command. It stands in stark opposition to mere reaction. It is the proactive sculpting of your communication. Among the most potent insights we have unearthed is the concept of answering the questions that linger unspoken, the ones you wish had been posed. Conceive of this as leveraging a broad inquiry as a launchpad. Rather than offering a perfunctory reply, you seize that opening to unfurl a narrative or articulate a point of paramount importance, one you are eager to impart. This is not an act of sidestepping the interrogator's intent, but rather of fulfilling your own. It testifies to your preparedness, your clarity of purpose, and your capacity to confidently guide the discourse to its most consequential terrain. Such self-possession is remarkable and possesses the power to fundamentally recalibrate the dynamic of influence in your favor. Equally vital is the cultivation of your own cadence and energy. It is facile to become ensnared by the interrogator's tempo, particularly if they exude an effervescent dynamism. However, mirroring such intensity can swiftly deplete your own cognitive reserves. Instead, nurture an internal compass. Attune yourself to your intrinsic rhythm, your natural thought process, and hold fast to it. Deliberate pauses, moments to gather your thoughts before speaking, are not indicators of deficiency, but rather of profound strength and considered reflection. Envision a virtuoso musician maintaining a steadfast tempo amidst a rushing orchestra. This is the caliber of control we endeavor to achieve. The instruments that facilitate this attainment are both elemental and profound. The strategic pause transcends mere silence. It is a crucible for assessment and deliberate response. It signals an assured command of one's thoughts. The narrative pivot represents the refined art of subtly reorienting the conversational flow. You might address a tangential inquiry, or frame your response in a manner that organically ushers in the subject you wish to explore. These are not stratagems of subterfuge, but sophisticated modalities of communication imbued with intelligence and self-awareness. Furthermore, these principles are not confined to the formal arena of interviews. They resonate across the spectrum of everyday social engagements, challenging dialogues, and even casual exchanges. The preservation of your own energy and the judicious selection of which questions to engage with can foster more authentic connections and mitigate the prevalence of misunderstanding. To embrace strategic answering is to reclaim your agency within the realm of communication. You transition from a passive respondent to an active architect of dialogue. This is not an advocacy for reticence, but for the eloquent potency of choice. It is about cultivating a quiet confidence that empowers you to guide the narrative, to safeguard your own energy, and to communicate with an unwavering clarity of intention. The art of the unanswered question is, in essence, the art of purposeful conversation. Proceed forth and engage with deliberate intention.